My name is Bassam Jabry, and I'm the managing director of Chemistry. Chemistry is a creative agency. We're based here in Singapore, and over the years we've transformed from being, if you like, a classic design agency of delivering product design, graphic design services. Today we really look at how do we solve complex challenges. We work with large organizations, bringing together a multidisciplinary group of people and applying, if you like, what you could call a human-centered design process to tackle complex issues, whether it's in the public sector or in the private sector in terms of hospitality, healthcare, and technology, and seeing how that can be presented in a way that would impact people, impact everyday citizens in a city, or impact the customers that businesses would be interested in engaging with. So we're actually delighted to be in a space like this. This is not something that I would have expected to be part of a few years ago. So typically designers maybe are invited to design conferences with other designers, and you're kind of preaching the same thing. So it's great to be here where it's a very different audience, and we'll hopefully be able to bring an end-user-centric point of view. And the surprising thing that we find, and this is really happens out there as we engage with our clients, that as we get into things like our technology, new ideas, people are inspired by what technology can do, but the irony sometimes is that we forget the end user, the recipient of who we're delivering this thing to, and how they will respond to it. And it's not to say that that's wrong, it's that sometimes the way it's molded, the way the fine details, the nuances are sometimes just not quite right. And what happens is the end user, the recipient of this solution, rejects it. And we think, oh, the idea failed or the technology failed, but that's not true. It's just that the way we presented it, the way we interacted with it wasn't just quite right. So the collaboration between designers and technology people, policymakers, and all the other groups coming together is very critical. So our workshops are something that brings all these different groups together. We have a systematic process of going through insights, ideation, and prototyping to envision what new ideas and possibilities could be. The workshop today is a very, very compressed version of that. It's very quick, but hopefully it'll give participants a good flavor of our methodology and how that's approached. I think it's absolutely critical. There's a lot of possibilities out there. The general thought of bringing IoT in areas where there's automation, it frees up manpower, particularly in a smart city context, is very, very clear, right? We don't need to think too hard to know that there's very good benefits that can be gained from that. As the IoT starts to expand, it will impact more and more areas of our lives, right? So there's a lot of IoT, I'm sure, happening today in many cities that we don't even see or hear about as everyday people going about our city. As the technology permeates throughout the infrastructure more and more, we will start to engage with it. Now there's a functional side to this, there's a kind of business end to it, but at the same time there's a human side, and I mean what I mean by human is humans can be a little bit illogical, right? Emotional. Sometimes we want things in a certain way, but maybe the next day it's a bit different. So you could almost talk about that being a sort of a relationship starting to happen between us and the environment around us. Let's say typically, more and more people are living in cities. So what is the relationship between the inhabitants of a city and the infrastructure within that city? So this is where the way that designers and people who are maybe of a social sciences background can impact the development and the thought process of IoT. The other aspect that is worth considering, and what we heard this morning from the speakers, is a little bit of the fragmentation of IoT. And that makes sense. It's a fledgling industry. We're grappling to find, okay, what is the right solution? How do I bring in certain solutions or technologies that work or not work? The human-centered approach helps to look at it from the flip side. So to see what is the user's point of view, and where do we need to connect the dots so that technology A needs to talk to technology B in order to streamline a certain flow or a certain process or a certain way that I go about my daily life. The end user doesn't see, you can't go to someone and say, oh, well, here we're using Zigbee technology and that's on Wi-Fi, and so the two don't talk to each other. I'm sorry about that. That's not a logical explanation or something that people would be aware of. So that's where it builds insights that, okay, those two guys need to talk to each other, we need to bridge that gap, and if we do, these are the implications, these are the benefits that we can deliver. So security is really about, if you look at it, it's a very human thing, right? So it becomes a social discourse. It becomes one about society, one about our individualism versus our integration within the greater whole. Clearly, there's a lot of benefits in sharing our information. We know that. And at the same time now, it's matured enough. The early days, if you remember when we all jumped onto Facebook, at least if I share about my experience, I was posting everything. And with time, as you become more and more aware of like, oh, who's seeing this, who's targeting me, where are my ads coming from, you start to sort of censor and filter what you put out there, right? So we're becoming more digitally savvy. Clearly, there's still benefits in. We don't want to go back to the old days where there's no connection or there's no sharing of information. At the same time, we need to nuance how we do that. Where are the moments where we need to be very specific? This is my data and this is me, because the system can benefit me that way. And this is where I need to be anonymous, and where my privacy is actually quite important. And again, the human-centered approach, the way that designers think, the way that ethnographers look at the world, the way that we have conversations with everyday people to understand what are their concerns, when is it enough and when is it too much. Those are the nuggets of information that will help developers and system architects to know how to build the boundaries around aspects of data security. So hopefully we can bring relevant insights to the stakeholders who are building these systems. As I said, I'm really excited to be here. I think it's great that designers are included in other aspects of the system, if you like. So whether technology is a very key part of our life. So it's really good to be here and represent the designer's point of view and the human-centered point of view to balance the conversation, if you like. The keynote presentations we had this morning were really relevant. There was talk of collaboration, which is really at the heart of the work that we do. Security, which we just talked about, is also very, very relevant, and we're grappling with these things. So I'm very happy to be here, to be part of that conversation. And I really hope that we will see more of this in future iterations of IoT. So next year there'll be more designers, more talk of how do we collaborate and so on. So I guess the challenge is on me this year to do a good job at the workshop and at the panel discussion later this afternoon.